All right, we're back and we're going to talk about gear sets now. And there's an important topic we talked about previously, which is tanky versus being a tank. So, Woeler, explain exactly what we're talking about there.
So, as a tank, there are multiple different gear sets, and of course, there are multiple categories we can separate them into. And making these categories gives us a better overview of what sets suit what situation, what type of player, beginner, master, etc. So, first of all, we have to make a distinction between what is a tanking set and what is a tanky set. Now, a tanky set is a set that gives you resistances. It buffs you to the max that you will survive every single hit. You can stand there, block, do nothing, and you will still survive and be not that dependent on a healer. The thing with these sets is they work for you to taunt and stand there. Nothing more. There's nothing more these sets are providing to anybody else. They are perfect for beginning with tanking and learning the boss mechanics, but as soon as you want to make progress and want to get runs faster, want to play with better players, because they are going to require you to run certain things, of course, if you want to play a level higher up, then you might want to look into the tanking sets. And these are sets that generally keep your tankiness to a comfortable level, but allow your group to gain buffs from you. And this is a very important distinction we need to know about. Tanking, buffing, and staying alive. Tanky is purely focused on staying alive. So if you want to play with these sets, then there are a lot of different options, and you can see them all listed on my site with a little explanation and what level I think they are suited for. And you will be able to pick your perfect setup from this, according to what level do you play, or do you consider that you play? What kind of boss am I fighting? What's my group expecting of me? And at what level is my group playing? So you can choose to run, for instance, a set that supports your group through giving them weapon and spell damage, like Powerful Assault, or you can use a set that reduces your ultimate cost, like PvE Dragon Guard, which will allow you to use more War Horns and get your group running smoother. Now there's a distinction between those two sets again. There's, if you have tanking sets, you have direct support and indirect support. Now what we mean with direct support is your set that you are wearing is doing something immediately in combat. You're wearing Powerful Assault, you activate your Vigor or your Speed buff, and your group immediately gains weapon and spell damage. Ebon Armory, your group immediately and always gains more health. These are direct support sets, and they are very, very strong. These are the sets that you want to focus on if you go to the very, very high level. Direct support sets, very important. Then you have the indirect support sets. Now these are a kind of in-between part where you play, you're not really sure, am I tanky enough, can I do this? Maybe you're doing an encounter for the first, second, or third time, you're not really sure what you have to do, and you still want to be on the safe side. Then you want to put in an indirect support set, and what this means is that the set is buffing you and allowing you to buff your group more, so it goes through you. Generally, these buffs are related to ultimate. Warhorns. You wear Akaviri Dragon Guard, you will get your ultimate up faster and can do more ultimate. Now depending on your class, you will also get back more resources if you do it like this. The same thing for a set like Tava's Favor, where you can gain more ultimate by putting up a dodge buff. This, in the first place, doesn't really affect your group up until you get your ultimate up and then buff them. And this generally allows you to also stay more tanky than with the direct support sets. So these are kind of the steps that you want to make. You go from the complete tanky sets to the indirect support sets to the direct support sets. And this is the path that you can walk from beginner to master, where you ultimately find yourself not in need of full heavy armor, playing a tank in maybe in medium, fully dedicated to buffing and not that much anymore you're not that much busy with tanking anymore. This is a basic thing, and you're solely focused on buffing.
Okay, so here is just a basic loadout for newer players, like a beginner level tank T3. It looks beautiful, don't it? Oh, you can't see it, but anyways, the people watching can see it. It's amazing.
All
so
right.
I'm running 5 Hispark. It's just a real simple, like we talked about, a beginner level tank that makes you really tanky, but doesn't really provide anything else for your group. I'm also running Bahara's Curse, something very similar. Really tanky because it just heals you so well. Gives a nice snare, but it doesn't provide anything for your group. So if you're playing just, you know, basic tank stuff, you want something that's craftable or you can get farm through just doing quest, this is a decent beginner setup, along with good old Blood Spawn, so generate ultimate. This would provide some utility to your group. But I want to make sure that people understand some things, because I think you understand at a greater level than I do, traits and enchants and how they're used. So first of all, I want to show the viewers your website and your cool block cost calculators. So we're going to talk about the block cost calculator that you developed here, and it's under general tanking info on your website. And
Yep.
so you kind of cleared up some misconceptions for block cost for me when I saw this. And can you explain this a little bit?
So block cost is kind of a funny thing in the Elder Scrolls Online, because you are constantly reducing a base value by a percentage. Now, I hope I'm not going to get too mathematical here, but what you're basically doing is the basic block cost, if you have no buffs at all, is 2,160 stamina or magicka if you're using a frost staff, and this can only be reduced once per second, if I'm correct. It doesn't matter how many times you get hit. This will be your base block cost. Now, reducing this cost of block, is done by wearing certain sets, having certain passives, having certain traits, having certain champion points. The thing is, it's always by a percentage and not by a real number, and this makes block cost very confusing for people, because how does it actually work? The thing with block cost that's the most important to know about is that your passives that you have, you should always get them. They are free. The thing is, the block cost is calculated step by step. So it will be CP, and then it will be passives and sturdy. It will be first CP, then you get a number out. So let's say you have 10% CP cost reduction. It will reduce 10% from this base value. It spits out the number, and with that number it will continue. This means that if you have 10% reduction from CP, this will get reduced. You get a new number. Now, if you have another factor in your block cost that also reduces by 10%, but that now gets calculated with the second value we got back, it means this 10% is not as much as this 10% you got in the previous calculation. So yeah, it will reduce the effectiveness. So the more factors you have, the more reduction of these factors you will get. And this is why running sturdy is a very problematic thing in the tanking community, because you have your CP and you have sturdy, and they are two different factors. They do not add up, they multiply. And this is a big problem, because if you're using both, you will devalue basically both. So a good rule to keep to yourself is, what do I want to have? Do I want to run sturdy? Then don't touch the champion points for block cost reduction. Do you want to run champion points? Then don't touch sturdy. There's the enchants that you have. They go on your jewelry, and they reduce your block cost. And it's the only thing in the game that does this, not by a percentage, but by a flat value. And this is why these enchants are so extremely powerful. There's absolutely no reason not to run them, because they are not affected by any of the percentages at all. They are a flat value, they will always work. If your block cost is 10 or if your block cost is 10,000, these will always be the same. If you have 1 million champion points, or 5 or 7 pieces sturdy, or 1, these enchants will always have the same power. And they are very, very powerful. And that is why they are very important for reducing your block cost. Also because they are in the very end of the calculation, meaning that they will not affect the other steps in the calculation. They will not reduce sturdy, they will not reduce your champion points, they will not reduce your passives. And that's why these enchants are so very, very strong to use when reducing your block cost.
If you don't want to run sturdy, what traits do you recommend to run and why?
So this part is up for discussion. It's partially comes down to preference, partially comes down to playstyle. Personally, I like to run infused on my big armor pieces, so that's helm, body, and legs. And I like to run divines on the smaller pieces. Now, why do I like to run divines on the smaller pieces? I use the magical region, Mundustone, the Atronach, and I will get a little more magical region out of these divines pieces. Yes, it's not going to be anything crucial or great that you're going to get out of this, but it's still something. And reducing my block cost even more, because I'm a person that uses champion points, it doesn't make any sense. You could also say I'm going to enchant all my armor pieces with the triple enchants that give you stamina, magic, and health, and I'm gonna go full infused. That's also a good choice. So you have to make this decision, like, do I want the more resources or the more Mundus effect? It also depends on, are you main tanking or are you off tanking? What's your goal? Is your goal staying alive for resource management? Main tank? Is your goal support? Off tank? As an off tank, you might be using the ritual Mundustone, increasing your healing. Their divines will be way more powerful than anything else, because it will increase the effect of this Mundustone that gives you more healing output. So it really comes down to what do you want and what is your personal preference. Divines is a good choice, infused is a good choice, and sturdy is only a good choice if you don't use the champion points. And the choice between the champion points and sturdy is up to what gear sets you wear during the day. Like, I wear a lot of Powerful Assault when I'm doing dungeons. Now, up until now, and maybe this has changed with the Imperial City, Powerful Assault did not drop in sturdy. It just didn't. So I could not rely on sturdy, because if I would switch to my Powerful Assault setup, I would lose all my block cost reduction. So I had to choose for champion points. But maybe sturdy is now a thing for Powerful Assault, and then you could basically go for sturdy always. Or you say, I don't run Powerful Assault, so I will run sturdy and use my champion points anywhere else. So basically it is, use it to what you are playing. Max infused works really well. Infused divines also works really well. Sturdy only works if you're not using champion points for block cost reduction. Those are the three paths you can walk.
And then last thing to touch on is weapon enchants. So a thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is, you know, the infused trait on your weapon with the Crusher enchant stacks with some other resistance debuffs, meaning more damage essentially, right? So these things are very important, but you also give up the defending trait, which is more mitigation, or the decisive trait, which it generates more ultimate. So what do you like to use on weapons and why?
Yes, so there are multiple choices for weapons also. You have decisive, giving you more ultimate. You have defending, giving you more resistances. And you have infuse, giving you a stronger enchant. Now for an enchant, a tank should always be running a Crusher enchant. This is an enchant that when it procs will reduce the resistances of that particular mob or boss. There is different ways to make use of this. Personally, I do not run infused. But you can. But here's the thing. I like to run defending just to have that little more resistance, as I'm already running extremely on the edge with resistances. So defending comes in handy for me. But let's say you're already armor capped and you don't want to run defending. Then you could run decisive, gaining more ultimate. Or infused. But here's the thing with infused. If you want to run infused Crusher, everybody in your group who is using Crusher should be running infused. And this is something you have to coordinate. The problem with it is, if I have an infused Crusher enchant and it procs on a boss, and my healer has a normal Crusher enchant and it procs 1 second later, this non-infused Crusher will override my infused Crusher and it will be nullified. And this is a problem, especially if you have 2 healers and 2 tanks running Crusher enchant and you may be the only one running infused, then it doesn't make any sense to run infused. So if you want to run infused, you have to coordinate it. Otherwise, defending if you don't feel comfortable with your armor, and if both are not the case, then go for decisive. You'll always gain something from decisive.
All right, great. So I think we understand a lot more about tanking and traits and getting the proper gear set up. So with that being said, I like Hispark for the average player. What would you say is a good setup for the average player that either can craft or they can get overland and they just want to start playing?
Yeah, Hispark is definitely a very good solution. Even with the changes they made this patch, it's still a very good set, and it's easy to use, and it will get people used to the feeling of what it's like to be in the tanking role and stand in that position, and it might also forgive some mistakes. And that's why it's a really good set for beginners. What I would say another good set for beginners is the Dragon Guard set. It drops in E-Smart, it's easy to get. You can get it from doing the dolmens, and you can get it from doing some world bosses there. I think it drops weapons, jewelry, armor pieces. You can get everything you want from it. It's heavy, so it will also be easy to use and not heavy on you. It will not be reducing your resistances. So this is also a very good beginner set. And I think even if you have some gold, you could just walk up to the guild trader and buy yourself a set because it's bind on equip.
Now we're going to transition and actually show you what this looks like in game. So remember that tanking, there's context to it, right? So what you run in a dungeon might be completely different than what you run in a trial. What trial you run might determine exactly the gear set and loadout that you go with optimally to beat that as fast as possible. So, that being said, I'll focus on the dungeon aspect because that's kind of what I do. I don't do a whole lot of trials. But Woeler is going to focus on the trials, and we're going to show you positioning, resource management, strategy, buffing your group optimization, and end it with some just basic builds that you guys can go away with. And then I will show you my build that I play with once I get the gear.
Want to get more information about tanking, I'd say follow this series on the LTS channel. It's definitely going to be an interesting ride, and we would like to show you some more views and more options for tanking, and I hope you learned something from what Delta and I have to say about that.
In other words, get fired up a tank.
Exactly.
Alright, thanks so much for watching.